Welcome, everyone, to an NCAA Digital March Madness Men's Basketball Chat. I'm Andy Katz. Pleased to be joined by Tom Burnett. He's the commissioner of the Southland Conference and the chair of the Men's Basketball Selection Committee. We're going to talk about the top 16 reveal that happened on Saturday for the NCAA tournament, a couple of weeks away from Selection Sunday. First off, let's deal with the top of this. Gonzaga, Auburn, Arizona, and Kansas. Pretty consensus number one seeds. What went into locking in those top four?
Well, I think, we've been watching these teams closely throughout the year and some other teams as well, as people might surmise. But I think in the end, we felt really good about, the order we put them in. Gonzaga certainly has been very good throughout the year. They have some really quality wins against some other teams that are here in the reveal as well. And, I will say this, the margin between 1 and 2, between Gonzaga and Auburn, is razor thin. A lot of discussion in the committee room, what the differences were, different opinions here or there. And in the end, and again, very slim margin, Gonzaga got that opportunity. Likewise, as we moved down after Auburn, Arizona was really highly considered here. And I would say the same razor thin margin is there between Auburn and Arizona as well. Kansas might be a little bit different, but Arizona very close to Auburn here in our reveal here.
All right, so now let me go to that second group in the 2 line: Baylor, Kentucky, Purdue, and Duke. Interesting on Baylor, because Baylor, 9 quad 1 wins, so great overall resume, but they have struggled lately, got swept by Texas Tech, and yet they're ahead of Kentucky, Purdue, and Duke. What was the decision-making there?
Well, I think as many have heard over time now, the committee's really looking at the entire body of work, and you can't really discount, the success Baylor has had. As you say, they lead Division I with quad 1 wins with 9, and that is a remarkable feat so far. And the committee has to acknowledge that, and certainly understanding that, maybe there's a defeat or two here recently. Some of that comes into play with Baylor's injuries as well. So that came into play in the conversation as well. So very difficult discussions, even for a top 16 reveal before we do it for real in 3 weeks. But that's where Baylor had the advantage. Couldn't quite get Baylor to the 1 seed line because of the defeat they had at Kansas. But right now, the committee felt good. And Kentucky was in the mix, too, in the discussion for a number 1 seed.
So overall strength of the league, you've got 2 Big 12 teams, 2 SEC, 1 Big 10 in that top 8. Baylor and Kansas, 4-5. Obviously, the Big 12, very strong, top to bottom. And so is the Big 10. I'm just curious with Purdue at 7 overall, and then obviously a 2 seed. How much does the strength of the Big 10 help potentially, move them up and potentially could in the next couple of weeks?
Well, as many know, we really don't talk about the conferences so much, the brand names of the conferences. We're looking at the teams individually. But, Purdue is another team. They've had 8 quad 1 wins. They've done very well. They're leading a very tight Big 10 race right now. So you certainly have to acknowledge that. And, they had a little bit of an edge over Duke. They have more quad 1 wins than Duke, and really no bad losses. So the committee thinks very highly of Purdue, but there's a lot of teams in that conference that would fall into that same category.
All right, let's go to the 3 line. You've got Villanova, Texas Tech, Tennessee, and Illinois. What jumps out to me there is Texas Tech. You can make an argument that Texas Tech could be a 2 seed based on wins over Baylor, 2, beating Texas and beating Kansas, also have a win over Tennessee. So in that regard, what went into the thinking with Texas Tech?
Yeah, another close decision there to keep Villanova just ahead of them. I think the committee, really likes the strength of schedule that Villanova has. I think certainly, edged out really out of the number 2 spot by Duke, barely. But Duke had those wins against Gonzaga and Kentucky. But, Texas Tech, certainly quite a bit of discussion there as well. again, entire body of work. I think the committee kind of recognizes that right now, 3 weeks out, Villanova has that edge. But you can't ignore Texas Tech. They have 11 wins in quad 1 and quad 2 and doing very well for themselves as we head down the stretch.
All right, finally, the 4 line. Wisconsin, UCLA, Providence, and Texas. Wisconsin, no brainer. Obviously, they've done a great job with their overall resume. Providence as well. They got the win over Texas Tech. They got good road wins, win over Wisconsin. So no debate there. I'm curious, UCLA and Texas, and I'm going to throw one at you here that I thought might be in this list, and that's Ohio State, because Ohio State has the wins over Duke at home, Wisconsin at home, a neutral Seton Hall. So, that's the one that I thought might be in this group of 16. What were the thought process with UCLA, Texas, and then versus Ohio State?
Well, I think UCLA, I think the committee really hung its hat on the wins they have against Arizona and Villanova. That really made a mark on the committee as well. We have them, really ahead of Providence. The team in the middle there, when we talked about UCLA and Texas, part of that was UCLA has won against Marquette and Villanova. Providence, I think, is 1 and 2 against those teams right now. As it relates to Texas, I think certainly the wins against Kansas and Tennessee might resonate perhaps a little bit stronger. Ohio State does have those wins against Duke and Wisconsin, as you mentioned, but I think right now the committee's giving the edge to wins over Kansas and Tennessee for Texas right now.
But so to put a bow on it, how close was Ohio State? I mean, were they right there potentially be in that top 16?
Yeah, outside of the top 16, the committee spent a lot of time on 3 teams, Alabama, Houston, and Ohio State. So those 3 were in the mix in the discussion, quite a bit of time spent on that final quadrant or final 4 that we put into the reveal bracket here. So all of them in the mix, and certainly with the opportunity to, move up or down in the coming weeks.
Well, I appreciate it, Tom. I love this time of year. Love that we're getting closer and closer, and feeling very good about where we are with this top 16.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Andy.